Hey guys, it's Sam here, and I wanted to talk about the sacking of Sean Dyche. So, Nottingham Forest have sacked Sean Dyche after 114 days. They sacked him after a very disappointing 0-0 draw, which I think we all can say is not acceptable. You can't, not being able to score, but also not being able to beat perhaps the worst team in Premier League history in Wolves at home is an embarrassing result, no matter who you are. So I get that they're obviously frustrated, I get that there is an annoyance there, and I understand that also there were boos at the end of the game. Obviously the fans had made their thoughts and feelings very clear, and as we know, Marinakis is not the most level-headed out of all the owners, and in doing so has relieved Dyche of his duties, and that makes it now the third manager of Nottingham Forest this season to be sacked, and they are about to have their fourth manager of the season, which you'd think would be their last, given we're in February and the season ends in May. You'd think that the new manager that comes in, at the moment looking like Vitor Pereira, will get the 3 months to the end of the season, but under Marinakis, no one knows. Now, the reason I wanted to discuss this is because there are a lot of things that I wanted to talk about in this video. Now, this video will most likely be going up tomorrow, which will be Friday, which by that point in time, Forest have probably hired their next manager. It might be Vitor Pereira, or he might end up turning it down because he did work under Marinakis at Olympiacos and lasted 6 months. So, who knows? Maybe they're willing to give it another go at Forest, or maybe Vitor goes, do you know what? No thank you, I don't want to work with you again. But it's seeming like they're in talks, and right now he is seemingly the favourite to take over. But again, anything's possible in these type of conversations, as well as them having previous history. So yeah, who knows what will happen, but by the time this video goes up, they will probably have their next manager. And yeah, what you're looking at is possibly a I don't know, to be honest. You're quite possibly looking at maybe an owner who has reached the conclusion of his journey. You know, he's always made quite a few rash decisions, you know, since he took over at Forest, since there have been plenty of managerial changes, you know, and but this is bringing it to a whole new level. Having your fourth manager of the season, I don't know if that's ever happened in the Premier League before. So you're breaking a record that, quite frankly, no one wants to break. But when you're about to have your fourth manager of the season and hire your third manager of the season, maybe it's time to look at yourself rather than the manager. Sean Dyche was just nominated for Manager of the Month for January. Now I know that doesn't tell the whole story, because let's say you have 4 games in a month and all those 4 games are the bottom 4 teams of in the table. You know, it doesn't tell the whole story, but he still was nominated. He's still only lost 1 game in the last 6, including 2 wins and 3 draws. I know those draws aren't really good enough right now. Forest need wins to push them further away from the table. Right now those draws will seem like defeats. But also you have to look at the circumstances as well. I don't think Forest had the best January window they could have had. I think they let go of Douglas Luiz far too soon. They should never have let him go before bringing in a replacement. You know, you had the agreement with Juve on a season-long loan. Even if the player was pushing for the move back to Aston Villa, you have to tell him, look, we don't have a replacement for you right now. You can only go when we get that replacement. If we don't get the replacement, then you're going to have to stay here. You know, I think they let that go too soon. I don't know. I think they could have probably done with a winger, another winger. I know they were interested in McNeil, and that didn't seem to go through, although they ended up agreeing a deal with Palace, so I'm surprised Forest didn't match that bid. I don't know, maybe Forest tried and McNeil said he only wanted Palace, I don't know. But it doesn't, something just doesn't seem to add up. You know, where you are in the table, when you're towards the bottom of the table, those are the teams that you'd expect to make quite a lot of signings in January to make sure that they stay up. Forest didn't do that. For the first time since they've come up, they had a quiet deadline day. They brought in that one left back, and that was it. When usually deadline day is the day that Forest bring in at least 3 players. They brought in 1, and they brought in a position that they needed, a left back, but they also needed players in other positions, and they didn't get them throughout the whole of January, not just on deadline day. So I think that's just very, very poor. The recruitment seems to be poor. Not a lot of their signings from the summer seem to have really hit the ground running. I know they went for a different approach this season, signing younger players that they can hopefully build up and sell for massive amounts of profit in the future, but they haven't really hit the ground running. Now you can also say that they probably haven't hit the ground running because there's no stability. They started with Nuno, they went to Ange, they've gone to Sean, and now it looks like they could be going to Vitor. So how do you expect these new players to actually bed in and settle at a new club when they're about to have their 4th manager of the season? You know, these are the things that you have to look at. Like I said earlier, if you're about to have your 4th manager of the season, it's time to look at yourself and not the manager. And to be honest, I think Sean Dyche might feel hard done by, because there's something that I want to read, and I saved it to my photos. So these are win percentages of Nottingham Forest permanent managers under Marinakis. So Sean Dyche was at top of that with 47.1%. For a team that's in 17th, that's not a bad win record at all. It's not. It's actually quite decent. Steve Cooper, second with 43.3%. Martin O'Neill, 42.1%. Mark Warburton, 40.5%. Espirito Santo, 38.4%, which is very surprising to me, given the fact that they were in, Champions League spots for large parts of last season. The fact that he only had 38.4% win percentage is mental. Lamucci, 36.4%, Karanka 31.4%, Chris Hughton 26.4%, and then obviously Postecoglou 0%. So when Sean Dyche is clear ahead of everyone in the win percentage, he is going to feel hard done by. I thought he'd at least get to the end of the season. I thought there was no way, even with how hot-headed Marinakis is, there's no way he's going to sack another manager. He's not going to sack his third manager of the season. He's not going to make a third sacking at all. You just can't do that. But he's gone and done it. And I think a lot of these sackings come from frustration, because they happen straight after a game. They happen hours after a result where, the frustration's still very high. You're not in a clear frame of mind, and you make a rash decision. The announcement was made at 12:30 midnight, but we don't know exactly when Sean Dyche was told that he was relieved of his duties. Possibly at midnight. We know that there was a meeting in the director's box with senior members of the players. So, was that a bollocking? Was that a casual conversation asking the players if they still believed in Sean Dyche? Or was it Marinakis telling the senior members of the players, look, we're going to sack Sean Dyche. As senior members of the squad, it's your job to tell the rest of the team. We don't know what happened in that meeting. We don't know what was said. But what we do know is obviously there was then a discussion with the manager, and the outcome is he is gone and a new manager will come in. Again, is that the right decision? As someone that is not a Forest fan, obviously from the outside it's very easy to say it doesn't seem like the right decision, but I think only naturally Forest fans can tell you, because they are actually watching their team week in, week out, if this is the right decision or not. And my dad's a Forest fan. He wasn't set on Sean Dyche. He hasn't been for a while. So I think he was more leaning towards the end of the season and then him going. But yeah, I think even he's probably losing faith in Marinakis as an owner. Now let's be clear, Marinakis has done some great things for Forest. Obviously getting them back in the Premier League, getting them back into Europe, redeveloping the City ground. I think he's done some things for the city of Nottingham as well. So it hasn't all been terrible, but this is sort of reaching its conclusion for me. I think at the end of the season, a lot of things need to be discussed. Clearly, Edu's not the right guy. Clearly, we know this. You know, he needs to go. The recruitment team needs a massive revamp and change. But I think the biggest change that needs to happen is at the top. Either Marinakis has to sell, or he has to hand over control of Nottingham Forest and leadership to someone else. Whether it's within his family or in his company, I don't know quite what owns. I don't know if it's the Marinakis family that owns Forest, or if it's a company that he works for that owns it. I don't really know. So I just think he has to hand over control or sell, because this cannot continue. I think you're also looking at fans are losing patience, I think, with him. I think a lot of them are probably sat there going, what on earth is happening here? How are we about to hire our 4th manager of the season? How have we sacked 3 managers? How did we go from getting European football for the first time in a long time to sacking that manager 3 games into the next season? Well, they know how, because they had a falling out. How do you then go and hire a manager that won the Europa League only a few months ago, not winning any of his first 8 games and being sacked? How do you then go to a manager in Sean Dyche, who is well renowned for keeping teams in the Premier League, sacking him when you know, he very well still could have kept them in the Premier League? I still think even if Dyche stayed, I wasn't confident Forest were going down. I'm not confident West Ham are going down. I am confident Leeds are going down. Now, I know that they beat Forest and got a very good draw against Chelsea, but you have to look at the manager. Daniel Farke has never kept a team in the Premier League. Every time he's been in the Premier League, he's been relegated. I don't think Leeds' squad is that great. I think West Ham will keep getting results. I think even if Forest had kept the manager, they'll probably get a new manager bounce like they did with Sean Dyche. So they'll be getting results. Even if they kept Sean Dyche, they would have been getting results. And I think Leeds will start tailing off. And I think it will be Wolves, Burnley and Leeds that go down. And now that they have sacked the manager, I think it's all but probably confirming Forest will stay up, because I don't think, you know, I don't know. Obviously the first game of the season, the first game for this new manager will be quite difficult. Fenerbahce away, and then their first Premier League game is Liverpool at home. So it isn't going to be easy for him, but I do think that they'll get results and they will stay up. I think they would have stayed up with Sean Dyche. I think they're going to stay up without him. So, yeah, I just think that now, if he makes this right decision, and it is Vitor Pereira or whoever, and they go on a great winning run to the end of the season and comfortably stay up, that should be that. You know, he has to hand control over to someone else or sell. Will he do that? No. I don't think he will. I think he probably doesn't see it as a problem. He probably sees it as, you know, these managers aren't good enough, and, you know, I'm doing everything I can. He seems like that player? He seems like that person that will pin the blame on everyone else before he pins it on himself. Maybe I'm wrong, but he does, from the outside, seem like that type of person. So, when you look at the overall how do I word this? How do I put this? I kind of know what I want to say in my head, but I don't know how to. I don't know how to bring it out. You know, that's been my issue pretty much my entire life. I think Marinakis has to realise that he is making Forest a laughingstock right now, and that he is also damaging Forest's reputation. A lot of players and a lot of managers are going to look at this club and think, nah, that's not for me. I don't fancy that. That doesn't seem like a well-run club. And that's going to hinder their future. You know, if they can't bring in great players, if the great players they do have are starting to question whether they want to be at the club because of the way it's run and because there is no stability, there's only one way that's going to go, and it's going to go down. And if they do go down, well, Marinakis' Forest stock will obviously go down. Right now, Forest are in the Premier League. They've been in the Premier League for a few years, and they've had Europa League football. Right now, Forest's stock is probably as high as it's been for years. The best thing for him to do is to sell. You are going to get the best money you can get right now if you sell. If you stay and you maybe think of selling in 5-10 years time, you might not even be a Premier League club in that time. You know, they have to be stable. They have to be obviously still in the Premier League, but it's not looking likely right now because there's no stability and there's no leadership. There's no I don't see an owner. I see a person who is desperately clinging on to a sinking ship. He is the captain of a Titanic. It's going down, and he is clinging on, deluded that no, we're not sinking, we're fine, everything's fine. That's just what I get from the outside. That's the owner in his own ownership. Like I said, I don't think Forest are going down. But that is him as an owner in the ownership. The ownership is the Titanic that's going down. That he is clinging on believing that everything is fine. When it's not. It's far from fine. And if he truly wants the best for the club, the best would be either to change his whole personality, which isn't going to happen, or hand control over / sell the club. You know, it's the only way you're going to actually do what's best for the club. So, that is it. It's been a long video, this. A lot longer than I thought it would be, but I had quite a few things that I wanted to say. And by the time this video ends, I'll probably think of other things that I wanted to say, but it's fine. I've got most of the things that I wanted to say off my chest in this video. So, thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.